For years, I have felt on an island by myself. I think between about 2020 and 2024, there has been this overwhelming chorus of voices, all shouting kind of the same message. High production ads don't convert. Keep it simple, keep it low budget. And this quote unquote rule became so deeply entrenched in D2C marketing that questioning it almost felt like heretical. Like if I were to try to question it, bring nuance to it, it would just get shot down like crazy. But I think I'm finally ready to really like lean in on what I actually believe is true and I've always known to be true, which is this rule needs to be broken. And I don't think I am alone in thinking this. I will say that there's been a lot of people who were in that one camp, and now you start to hear them saying you need to do a higher production stuff, which is interesting to me because I'm like, well, you should have been always been doing this, but okay, we'll take it. The truth is, you should be doing higher production stuff. You shouldn't just do low budget stuff. But let's talk about it. Let's break this down. The false dichotomy that's been hurting your performance. So, the anti high production sentiment largely came from people who had previously worked within kind of traditional advertising. Like they had great experience and they observed that the expensive, glassy looking ads were failing against kind of the scrappy, simple content and that really converted well. And I think the issue was and is still is that there's a fundamental flaw in their analysis. They were comparing non performance focused high production with performance focused low production. So, of course, the high production ads performed worse. They weren't created for performance in the first place. But what happens when you combine visual impact of high production, the conversion principles of performance marketing, and a deep understanding of digital platforms? Well, you get content that both stands out and converts. And so I think that there's always been this kind of unfair attack on high production because I would agree with those critiques of a lot of the ads that people would show and say this is not a good ad. It's like, yeah, that's not a good ad, but it wasn't a bad ad because it was shot really well. It was a bad ad because it didn't have conversion as the foundation of the ad itself. That's what made it a bad ad, not what camera it was shot on. And then they would, compare it to, oh, look at this creator ad. It's so great. It's like, yeah, because like it has the fundamentals of what makes a great ad. Again, the fundamentals of what makes a great ad has never been because it was how it was shot. It's because of, the strategy behind it. And so I think that people are starting to kind of warm up to that. But the reality is that I think high production is coming back in 2025. And I know people are saying that. But I think there's several reasons why. I think there's a few things that we can look at and analyze. And I think people are starting to see the power of high production content, which is unfortunate that a lot of brands missed out on it because it never went away, right? Like it never was like, oh, high production is out and then now it's in. It's like, no, I think just people are warming back up to it because one, the timeline is saturated with sameness. Think about it. If every brand was, and every brand pretty much in the last 4 years, 5 years, has been kind of using like creators shooting the same style, talking videos, talking about the products in the same way, nothing stands out, right? So not only does your ad library look the same, but like you just go and look at ads, it just all feels same. And so people are always trying to get an edge and say, how do we stand out? Well, high production quality immediately breaks through kind of the visual monotony that is a lot of the content we see today. And so I think that there is a bit of an arbitrage here that may not have been there a few years ago, but now there definitely is because people have just really optimized for kind of like creator lo-fi content. Now, I think that the another part or reason why high production can be really valuable is that premium visuals can build instant trust. Not a lot of people talk about visual branding. I think a lot of people in performance don't like to talk about branding, but let's let's make sure that we understand what branding is. A brand is about the relationship between a customer and a company, right? So I think it's easy for us, and I do this all the time. I say, "Oh, it's a brand. Hey, the brands." And so we think about branding, and we think about it from the like text, logo, color, fonts, and all that stuff. When really it's about your how you're communicating, your positioning, and the relationship that you are creating from a customer to the company and the products. But what we don't talk enough about is visual branding, right? And how does actually having this visual consistency at times can actually create trust, especially think about it from like a supplements perspective, or when you are in a crowded space, like what's going to make your product, why should I trust your product? Well, having nicer videos does create this trust of like, oh wow, this brand is like well put together, right? Versus like, I'm not saying that creator content is scammy or looks scammy, but if that's all they have, it's kind of like, are they starting up? Like, how legit are these ingredients? There's a lot of questions there. Now, again, I'm not saying like get rid of it completely, but there is value that high production can bring to communicating brand legitimacy. Of course, still have performance built in within it, but having nicer visuals is a helpful thing. The third reason why I think higher production is coming back is that creative capabilities can expand dramatically. There are shots, angles, lighting setups, creative concepts that simply aren't possible with a smartphone and a ring light. So, higher production just kind of ultimately unlocks creative approaches that otherwise wouldn't exist if you were just shooting iPhone stuff. Now, people can get really creative with iPhone stuff, but there are limits, and that's okay. But if you can shoot with multiple actors themselves versus creators, or you can get very different lighting, camera setups, angles of your product, all of a sudden, like you are opening up a whole new world about how you can show and communicate your product. And high production allows you to do that. Again, always have performance in mind, but those cameras, those visuals, all are now going to be a different part of your toolkit to communicate your product to a customer. The fourth and last reason why I think production is taking a bigger role now within a lot of brands and their marketing makeup is that it drives creative diversity in your account. And we've talked a lot about this in the past few episodes, but Meta is wanting creative diversity. Heck, customers want that. Viewers want that. They don't want to see the same old, same old. They want something different. If your ads are looking similar, you are limiting your ability to have the algorithm find you new customers. With higher production content, it introduces and welcomes diversity into your creative mix. So you will start to find efficiency across all your other styles of content because now you are able to give layers of styles and ways to communicate to customers that you didn't have before, right? So if you had just creative creator ads, like that's one style, but now you add in higher production stuff, hi-fi statics, lo-fi statics, images, carousels. All of a sudden, you're having a diverse way of communicating versus people kind of glazing over, seeing the same 20th creator talking about your products and having kind of the same hook over and over again. That's not going to get you very far. So let's talk about this kind of false economy of cheap creative. As cheap is whatever. I've often heard the pushback of production to be, but high production is just too expensive and risky. And I want to challenge that assumption. Okay, so higher production can cost more upfront, right? Comparative to like a $150, $200 creator video. Okay. So sure, a little bit more. But that quote unquote cheap alternative is producing dozens of nearly identical low production assets. And when most of those don't work, and they won't all work, did you actually save money? And if your conversion rate improves by, let's say, like 15% with a higher quality asset, then you can actually offset those additional costs. So if you think about it from that perspective, when you are investing in production, you also are trying to figure out how can these assets perform and bring my customer acquisition costs down so I can find more efficiency within the amount of money that I'm investing into that higher production. But also see on the flip side, like if you don't invest in higher production, let's say, and you're just going to stick with the same $200 videos, you're just going to do more of those, your ad account is going to look the same. It's going to be hard to create that diversity, which is going to make your ads fatigue. You're going to have struggles with scaling. So the add a dollar amount that you have every single month is going to be less and less efficient, which is going to cost you money. And you're not finding new ways to diversify, which there's long term risk of that. So I'm not saying that you need to all of a sudden abandon all creator style content, but the most successful brands in 2025 are the ones trying to find that right mix. They're the ones that are saying, we are going to allocate a little bit more budget towards something higher production because we know that this is going to create some differences. We want to find new ways to communicate. We need to take big bets, big swings, and we're not going to be able to do that in the current system that we have right now. And I think that is what's going to be most important. Higher production hero assets can be cut into multiple different formats and multiple different iterations. So there's actually a lot of value that you can get out of a production versus like with a creator video, you can get a lot of stuff from it, but not nearly as much as if you had a longer piece of net new higher production content. There's like mid-tier production, and like you can have like nice equipment but simpler setups. Like it doesn't have to be this like TV commercial. And then I think like you can layer that on with like creator style content, and that mix is just going to be dangerous, right? So don't just get rid of creator content. I'm not saying that's bad, but what I am saying is that there is this level of higher production content that has been almost written off for many years. But now that brands are struggling to acquire customers and get more of that top of funnel and to stand out, they're realizing that maybe they shouldn't have written off the higher production stuff. And they're realizing the power of it if it is done with a performance lens, which, of course, as I said in the beginning, a lot of times it was not, which is why it didn't really work well. And it makes sense why people would write it off. But if you can have great performance, high production stuff, that is a dangerous tool to have in your ad account. Let's talk about the competitive advantage that most brands are missing. Like I know for me, as the founder of Gattozzi Studios, I have seen firsthand how many of other content agencies have basically optimized their entire systems around creator content. They've got like this whole system. They're going to just like launch a bunch of content for you. And honestly, many just don't even know how to execute a high production shoot, which then I think creates a massive opportunity for brands who are willing to break this quote unquote rule of like, you don't do higher production stuff, because majority of the providers out there can't do it. And so if you think about it, your competitors are using other content agencies, ones that are focused on just creator content. And while everybody's else is just like creating variations of the same low production approach, you can actually like strategically deploy high production content that both captures attention and drives conversion. And that's what's like, to me, is the arbitrage, is that your competitors aren't doing this. And if you can find a way to add this into your mix, you are going to be a winner. So how can you do this without breaking the bank? Because I know some people are going to be up in arms and be like, oh, it's so expensive. I can't do this. I don't have $100,000. You don't need $100,000. Here is a quick way to do this. And I'm not even saying hiring us. I'm telling you, this is how you could do it all on your own. So if you have been exclusively in the like kind of the low production world, here's how I would start. Get your, dip your toes, get them a little wet. This is how I would do it. Step one, I would think about one higher production hero asset per quarter. Not even every single month, just start there with per quarter. Now, you need to ensure that your production team understands performance marketing principles. So, what I mean by that, if you're going to go and hire a local videographer, if you're going to hire, actors, all this stuff, you need to make sure that whoever's directing the shoot and whoever's, in charge of this shoot, that performance is the key, right? Like if they are just like, oh, but it's going to look so cool, not it, right? So you need to make sure you're educating your team on performance stuff, right? Yes, get the nice cameras, get all the nice models, all that fun stuff, but performance is the key. Okay. Most likely, if you're doing this yourself, you are going to have to manage the production yourself. And majority of videographers, photographers, most people out there are not in this performance landscape. So you will need to make sure that you are controlling the narrative when it comes to performance and the education of that. Now, when you are, the third step is to plan to create multiple assets from each shoot. So don't go and get one video and be like, all right, that's it. It's like, no. Make sure you're planning ahead of time of what are all the iterations we can get? What's all the B-roll that we're going to get from this? Really make sure that you're thinking about what do you get out of this shoot so it makes that investment almost a no-brainer. Like, yeah, of course, I'm going to spend a few $1,000s to get this, and then I'm going to get all of this. Amazing. Now, you want to A/B test against kind of your best performing current assets so you can kind of see how it stacks up. And then you want to analyze the performance and then the longer term like brand metrics as well. And remember the goal of high production isn't just to get high production, right? Like you're not like I got high production assets, check. It's like, no, you're doing this to strategically break through the noise and drive better results. Like you do need to find things that work, but you want to make sure that when you are assessing these things, what else are you getting out of it outside of like direct like ROI, like a ROAS or MER, whatever it is. Also think about like, okay, from there, I also got all these assets, which then allowed us to build out new ads, and those had efficiencies and all these different like second order effects there. You want to be thinking about that. And so you can definitely do this on your own and keep it like, lean. You can go to getting a team to do this, an agency. That's where you will trade off like paying for time, right? So if you do it yourself, time is money. You're going to have to spend more time doing it. But if you go with a team, then they'll take the time and the money. But that's going to be like a different cost for you. That being said, I think that people are like automatically hear high production and they think $100,000 or something crazy like that. And I think you can get really high quality stuff for a lot less than that. You do not need to be investing that much money in it. And then I think the other thing is like you want to first test on a smaller basis what works, how it's going to work, so that from there you can really just before you go and spend $100,000 on a campaign or whatever, spend $10,000. See how it works there first, and then go to those bigger things if you have the budgets to do that. But I think that majority of brands can do at least one asset per quarter and really shoot for that. And you're going to get a lot of content out of that one shoot to stretch yourself, not only from that one video ad, but then also all of the ads that come out of it. And it can be really worth your money. High production has been put off for a long time. Reality is, it's never gone anywhere. It's never left. It's just that a lot of people disregarded it. But now, when people are struggling to get new customers, struggling to break through the noise, they're realizing that maybe higher production isn't so bad if you have a performance lens to it. So that to me is the big thing in 2025 that we're going to see more of. And I think it's this content rule that should be broken. I want to break this stigma against high production. I'm a sucker for great creator content as much as anybody else. But I also think that there's a lot of value when you can add in these layers like a high production performance piece that can really help you stand out, really bring in new customer cohorts to your funnel, and ultimately grow your brand. This is a rule that needs to be broken. You and I will break it this year. Let's make it happen. Please make sure to follow along. You can follow me on X, Twitter, LinkedIn, all the fun things, the grams, TikTok, but also check out our podcast, check out all the other episodes. We've got a lot of content on YouTube, LinkedIn, all that fun stuff. We're everywhere. So just follow us along for more stuff, the newsletter. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching, listening, and peace out.